This video is made possible by the lovely people over on my Patreon. If you're interested in supporting the channel or you want to get your hands on some awesome high quality STLs, then please visit patreon.com/Will at Heroic Studios. What's going on, dudes and dudettes? I am Will at Heroic Studios and welcome back to my channel. As you guys saw from that intro, I went ahead and did something really cool. Now, if you don't recognize this is actually Zyuranger 4's battle axe, and yes, you can get LEDs in it. Now, this is my own specific design based on the original weapons, and I did this for my Patreon members. So if you guys want to go ahead and grab the file, go ahead and join my Patreon. Give me a try, guys. I'm doing a lot of cool stuff, a lot of custom original stuff like this, and I give you guys know-how and show you guys how to actually do the stuff along with the coding, soldering, just like in this video. And it also comes with an instruction manual that I put together myself. So go ahead, consider joining my Patreon. Check me out. I'm going to be doing more of these because I honestly had a blast with this. And since we're currently in the Zeo era on my Patreon doing Ranger statues, weapons, props, cosplay, and all that fun stuff, Zyuranger 3 is up next, and I do plan on doing the Tonfas just like this, except for green, it'll be blue. I had a lot of fun doing this. I had a lot of fun designing it, and I want to show you guys exactly what I did to get it to do this, as well as show you guys how to make it and what you guys can possibly do to mod this in terms of building it. Okay, so go ahead, check out my Patreon, Will at Heroic Studios. You won't be disappointed. In this video, I'm going to take you through everything that I did, from designing it to what I did in terms of wiring, soldering, the code, Arduino programming, all that fun stuff, as well as some of the modifications that I did, because this right here is only a prototype. I had to improvise on some of the things that I did. So as of now, the correct file with all the changes that I made is now available on the Patreon. So again, go subscribe. You won't have to improvise because I did that for you. And of course, there is a double-sided version where you have it's dual, so you can build two of these using the same method. And if you're not too savvy with electronics, there is a version where you can just make it a prop. Okay, so you got an electric version that you can go ahead and add wires and LEDs to, and then there's another one that you can just throw in your printer and print. I made it very versatile, very easy for people who don't want to get into the wiring and all that fun stuff, because that used to be me, but now I like doing stuff like this. Man, I just love it how it lights up. Okay. So I did make changes to it, and I'm going to go over that later on in the video. But first, let's get started with the actual print and design work. So the design took about a few hours, and I used Fusion 360 to get it all together. I used references from the show, from artwork, from toys, anything that I get my hands on to kind of get the basic shape down. And then I went ahead and I did my modifications, adding a longer blade, making it slightly bigger, and being able to add a little bit more detail and my own little spin on, because I realized that a lot of the stuff that I do for my patrons, they're already out there, dude. There's so many of the files. So I decided to like take what's out there and kind of put my own Will at Heroic Studios spin on it, so patrons can have something that's a little bit more unique and different, as well as adding electronics and stuff to it. So this design took me a few hours to do, but then I decided that adding electronics on it was going to make the original design a little bit more complicated. So I made two designs. One that is just the axe itself, and then this one where you can go ahead and add LEDs to it like that. So once I was done with the design, it was time to print. I threw these all on my Cobra, and I printed the shaft on my longer MK5, which does not disappoint. Review video on that coming soon. You will not believe a 100-hour print, but that's another video. I printed my blade in a glow-in-the-dark glow-in-the-dark filament, because I did not have any white left over. And I figured that once this thing is turned off with the LEDs, you get a nice little glow at the end of the day, and I thought that would be pretty cool. Plus, the LEDs glow very, very good through that glow-in-the-dark filament. So all the parts took about a day to print, and once that was done, it was off to assembling and making sure everything fit as it should. Now, as far as materials go, you needed to purchase a few things from Amazon. First of which is the most important part, the battery. This battery is rechargeable. Now, before I was using a dual watch battery power supply that came with a switch. Problem is that with this, you would have to undo the end cap, turn on the switch, and then put the end cap back on. And then when you're ready to turn it off, you take off the end cap and just kind of turn off the switch and put it back together. I didn't want to do that. So I found this rechargeable battery that you can get on Amazon for about 12 bucks, and you plug it in and it only activates when you hit the button to turn on the LEDs. Plus it's rechargeable. Haven't figured out how to recharge it yet, but once I do, I will let you guys know. Next up, obviously you need the Arduino Nano Every board. You can get about a good 6 of these on Amazon for about 20 bucks. I might have to correct myself in editing, but you get a lot of these little boards and they're rarely cheap. They're small. You can fit them virtually anywhere. And this is what I use to kind of go ahead and program my stuff when it comes to doing projects like that. Next up are connectors. I use these connectors for the battery because, again, you don't want to have, I didn't want to solder this directly onto the board knowing that these wires were probably live. I had no idea. So I got the connector that fit into the connector that was on the battery, soldered that on the board first, and then connected it to get the battery power going. Like I said, I'm not an electrical engineer expert. My field is in mechanical stuff. I didn't want to go ahead and shock myself when going ahead and soldering in. So I got these connectors just to make sure that I wouldn't have any accidents. Next up is these buttons. Now these are just push and hold buttons. The code works, which is you have to hold the button down in order for the LEDs to come on. I wanted these buttons because they came in colors. Now there is certain things that you can do to get like a switch to where you flick it, it comes on, it stays on, and then you flick it and it goes off. That takes a little bit of modifying in the code. I don't have a second code that does that. So if you plan on building it, you might want to use my code. Unless you are more versatile in coding Arduino, then go ahead and modify it and update the button to make it a switch instead of a press and hold kind of deal. Everything else in this tutorial is pretty much stuff that you're going to need right off the bat. Soldering iron, some heat shrink, wire strippers, as well as maybe some super glue if it comes down to it. And of course, scissors and stuff, just basic stuff to make this work. All right, now that we've gone over the materials, let's get into assembly and how I did putting this thing together. Assembling this thing was easy. Now, there is, and I made a really big mistake, I wanted to incorporate a PVC pipe that goes along the shaft to kind of give it more an internal support. Unfortunately, I miscalculated the outer diameter of that 1/2-inch PVC pipe, and the outer diameter as it is now, which is about 22 millimeters, will not fit the current design. But don't fret, I went ahead and I designed my own shaft that you guys can print. It's completely optional because this thing is actually pretty sturdy without that internal support. So you don't really need it, but if you want to have it in there, go ahead and print it out. It fits exactly as the PVC pipe would have fit. But like I said, you don't need it, but if you want it, it's there. I made it for you guys. It also comes with a little notch to where you can feed the wires in, through, and down without necessarily crushing wires when you put it all together. Everything fits nice and perfectly. So next step would be to actually start cutting and soldering wires and putting them together. But first, we have to talk about the code. Now for the code, I used the simple Arduino IDE version 2.21, which I think is their latest code writing software. Don't really know what the proper term for that is. But when it comes down to it, you do need to download this interface so you can actually flash your every Nano or Nano Every board with the firmware. Now, the firmware is already written. You do not have to do anything. I took care of that for you. Seriously, guys, I do this because I love my patrons. I love my patrons a lot. I want them to have fun with my model. So, hey, go subscribe to my Patreon. It'll be worth it. The code comes with the files and I show exactly how to flash the board, okay? But first, before we get in there, we have to make sure that your computer is set up to where it recognizes your Arduino Nano Every. Now, when you're plugging in your board, you need to have a USB cable and a USB micro connection that exchanges data and power. I had this issue last night because the power cable that I was using to plug in my Nano was not exchanging data. So the program did not recognize that my Nano was connected. And if it doesn't recognize it, you can't put the code on the board. So make sure that you do have a cable that does exchange data. Now, when you do that, you have to select what board you're using, so your computer can be like, hey, how you doing? I'm going to put this code on you. You good with that? Nano says, yeah, man, this is cool. Go ahead and put whatever you need on me so I can work the way I'm supposed to work. Once you do that, make sure your ports are where it needs to. Now, some of these are actually automatic. When you plug in the Arduino, as long as it's exchanging data and power, the port in which you are using, USB port, I'm saying, should automatically pop up. You don't have to do anything. But on the off chance that you do, you have to go into your computer's device settings and make sure that whatever USB that you're using actually is working, because sometimes it does not work, but you shouldn't have any problem, should be working. Now, when you're done with that, go ahead into the project folder that I have in the link on my Patreon, download the code, open it up, and it should open up right away. This is the basic code, and this code I have been using for every single one of my projects. It is so basic, I can't even begin to tell you how basic it is. Another thing that you want to do before you go ahead and compile this code onto your board is to make sure that you have the Adafruit NeoPixel library installed in the program. The way you do that is you go to the library tab on the left hand side, type in Adafruit_NeoPixel and download or install the library, because a lot of the commands that I have in this code is pulled from that library. If you don't have that library, the code will not compile and you won't be able to get it onto your board. So make sure you do that. More details about that, it is in the instruction manual that I've put together for everybody who wants to build this, so go for it. Now, once all of that is done, yes, I know it's a lot. But once you get it, and once you do it multiple times, you will be a freaking god at this stuff, okay? I am not a god. I suck at coding. It takes me forever to write a code. My brain doesn't work that way, but you gotta do it. It has to be done. So once you've done that, plug in your Nano Every, and you will see a green LED come on as well as an amber light, which tells you that it's getting power and it is receiving a secure data connection. Go ahead, hit the arrow in the top left corner. It will compile the sketch and then it will go to upload. Now, I had a mini heart attack because once I compiled this code into here, I noticed that an error message came up. This error message, do not worry about it. It is a generic error message. It has nothing to do with how the code is working, nor does it have to do with how the code was uploaded. According to the Arduino, it is just a random message that has been popping up in the IDE for a while. No one knows what it means. At least I don't know what it means. So don't ignore it. Your code should work just fine. Now, once you have that, it's time to get down to the circuits. This is going to be the fun part. So please pay attention. Hey guys, Future Will here. Quick segue, if you're using this for the first time, make sure you do go into your boards manager and download the library for the Arduino board. So that way your computer does recognize the Arduino Nano Every board. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Again, just make sure all your ports, everything regarding the board is open. All right, building a circuitry, building wires, connecting wires, soldering wires. This is all the tedious stuff. Again, I've already done it. I'm just telling you how to do it. So don't freak out. It's very easy. I've already built this breadboard when I was working on my Power Morpher. Now, Power Morpher is not done. I needed to take a break from that because my brain was shot. But rest assured, fellow patrons who are watching this video, I will get that Morpher done. This right here, this is a stepping stone. So if you can do this, you will be able to do the Morpher, no problem. I was able to do this. I'm feeling a little bit more confident with finishing up my Morpher design. So back on track. You have two components in this. You have the LED strip, and you have your button. All of that is connected to the Arduino board, and then you have your battery, which is supplying power to everything. This battery only gives off about 3.7 volts, which is enough to illuminate the LEDs. The circuit is already built. I drew the circuit in my assembly, not in my instruction manual, so you can actually see how everything wires up. The pins in the code, you'll see two pins being called out. Pin 6, which is for the LEDs, and pin 2, which is for the button. You must correspond these pins to the pin on the Arduino board. If you look underneath the board, you will see that there are pin numbers. D2, which is pin 2, and D6, which is pin 6. There also are analog nodes and connections. Don't worry about that stuff. Focus on the two pins that I've pointed out. Once you have already done all that, you have your code, the code is on the board, you are ready to start putting things together. Very simple stuff, okay? So after you've gone ahead and you've put the code on the board, feel free to connect it following the circuit that I have here and go ahead and test the LEDs. Always test before you start mounting anything. Make sure everything is working as it should be. Now, I need to point out something else. There is a number of LEDs that are called out in my code. Number is 16. It is 16 because when I'm using this code on my power morpher, there are 16 LEDs. Well, I guess you get where I'm going at. As long as there's 16 being called out, all the LEDs in this circuit is going to light up. However, you will have to cut LEDs in order for it to fit into the axe head. There is nowhere near 16 LEDs. You might get maybe 9 or 10 LEDs in there. This is okay. You don't need to change the code in order to accommodate just 10 LEDs. As long as the number of LEDs is less than what is in the code, you will be fine. Now, if for some off chance you want to go balls to the walls and add more LEDs into your weapon, if the LEDs are more than 16, you need to change that number to however many LEDs are in your design or in your build. Okay, so all the LEDs will light up properly. Okay. Okay, now here comes the fun part: cutting, stripping, and soldering wires. The LEDs that I bought do not have wires that go all the way down into the axe, obviously. So you have to cut off these cable connections here and solder new wires to your LEDs. You have to make sure that they're long enough to fit all the way through. Rule of thumb, make them too long rather than making them too short. Before you go ahead and solder anything on there, make sure you do have heat shrink. Heat shrink keeps the wires from crossing. If they cross, creates heat, and then you can possibly melt your entire axe or cause a fire. You don't want that. So make sure that before you solder everything together, you are putting heat shrink on your cables, then soldering, moving the heat shrink up, and using a heat gun to shrink the heat shrink so that everything is secure and is tight and you're good to go. Also, keep in mind that there is a hole at the head of the axe that you can feed the LEDs through, or the LED wires. Do not put supports in this hole because it is a pain to get out. I did not realize that my printer printed supports into that channel and I had to drill everything out, and I don't even think I got it all out. So be sure that you're not putting supports in that hole, because God help you trying to get that out. It's not fun. So forego supports in that channel. Once you've had everything fed through all the way down, you want to strip the end wires of your LEDs to expose the metal wires, because we're going to be using that to solder onto our Adreno Nano. Before we do that, we need to talk about our button. Buttons are fun. Everybody likes buttons. These buttons were extremely cheap on Amazon. They were about $10 for about 6 of these, or 10 of these, I'm sorry. Now, these buttons are press and hold and then release in order to activate and deactivate the LEDs. Like I said earlier in the video, if you want to go ahead and get a button that is just click on, click off, go ahead and do that. The code won't work. So unless you're versatile in coding and changing that to make it click on, click off, don't do it, because you might mess up the code and what it already does. If you're versatile in it, go for it, have fun. Now, in the original build, the hole that I had the button in was too big, so my button kept on falling through, but there is a little screw-on bolt underneath that you can go ahead and screw into it and make it solid. I've made that change. You should have no problem getting that in there and getting it to stay. A lot of the stuff that I had to do on my axe, I had to PLA weld the button in there, as well as some of the neck and connections, because it was just too big. Again, all of that has been corrected. You should have no problem going ahead and fitting that axe together. All right. So put the button in there, screw down the bolt. You should have a pretty solid connection, and make sure that you do strip those wires too and twist them. These cables, these wires on these buttons are a little bit beefier than the LED. So make sure you do get it to where you get a solid connection between the board and these cables, so everything can work as it should. Okay, let's get to the soldering. So now we are going to take our soldering and we are going to put all of it together. Did I say soldering? I'm sorry, I meant to say board. We're going to take our board and we're going to take everything that we learned and we're going to put it together. So after you've tested your circuit with what this circuit says right here, as you can see, you now have to go ahead and solder it all together. So you're going to take your board, you're going to flip it over, and you're going to notice that there are letters underneath it, and this is where you're going to go. we are going to start with the cable connection of the power supply. So these little connections that I got to kind of connect the battery to the board, you're going to undo that and you're going to connect the red to the 5 volts, and then you're going to connect the black to the ground. Make sure you solder that connection as much as possible. Not too much solder, but just make sure that the connection is solid, because you want to make sure that these wires are connecting to the holes in the board. Once that's done, we're going to take our LEDs. You're going to connect the red wire to that same voltage in. You're going to take the black wire, connect it to that same ground, but you're going to take that data wire, in this case mine is blue, and I'm going to connect it to pinhole number 6, because that is where it is getting the data from the code, telling it, hey, turn on when you see the button push. So make sure that you are connecting everything to the right pins. As for the button, you are going to take that red wire, you're going to connect it to pin 2. Make sure you do get that connection between the wire cable and the board as clear as possible before you go ahead and put soldering in it. You might need an extra pair of hands to help you do that. Do it, because it's kind of impossible to hold the wire down, get the solder, and do it. So unless you're a master of soldering, go for it. As for the ground, you're going to take that and connect it to the same ground that everything else is connected in. Now, you're done. That's it. Now you should be able to want to test it. So go ahead, plug in your battery to that connection and hit the button, and you should see your LEDs light up like all day. Now, if you haven't connected your blade yet, let's go ahead, put a little dab of super glue. In this case, I PLA welded it because it's a little bit more sturdier than super glue, but you can use super glue if you want. I left a little relief in there for those of you who want PLA welding. PLA welding is a little bit better than super glue, so I would recommend doing that. And once that's all together, go ahead and start gluing or PLA welding, however you want to secure your assembly together. So connect the shaft to the head, the handle to the shaft, bring the axe blade to the axe head, connect it all together, and make it look nice. And then sooner or later, you will have this awesome axe that lights up. Ooh, looks pretty. Now, to go over some do's that I did and things that you don't necessarily need to do anymore, and some of the changes that I made. As you can see in the footage here, this axe is, like I said in the beginning, a prototype. Some of the parts did not fit right, and as I said countless times in this video, I've already gone ahead and corrected that. The biggest thing that I corrected in the total build was getting rid of this cutout in the blade, because as you can see, there is literally a wall here that blocks the LEDs from passing through the entire blade. So if you want to go ahead and not use this blade, I have another blade that you can go ahead and put that does not have this cutout, so the LEDs can flash all the way through into the blade. So that's up to you. You can use my blade that I did, or you can use the updated blade that I did. All of them are in a file package. Another thing that I kind of went ahead and did, like I said here, you can see the PLA welding for the button to where it's sturdy. This hole is now able to fit and not have the button fall through. So you don't have to worry about go ahead and trying to figure out super gluing the button on there. It's solid. Stick your hand in, screw up the bolt on here and make it secure. You should be good. As well as the PLA welds on the shaft here, as well as the PLA welds here and on the blade, you can see right there. This is a prototype. I'm happy with my prototype. You won't have the prototype. You should have the final thing. So there you have it. You have just successfully built your Green Ranger power axe. You know what's better than one power axe? 2 power axes, or battle axes. Wasn't really clear on what this weapon is called, so I just called it a battle axe. Hey everyone, Future Will here. Part that I forgot to mention are magnets. These are 10 millimeters wide by 2 millimeters thick. These are my default magnets that I use on all of my projects. They're designed to connect with the magnets inside of the handle to simply snap on and snap out for easy disconnection of the battery, or to look at the circuit and change anything you might have. So make sure you do get these. You don't want to glue it because you might need to get inside the handle to fix a few things. Okay? Okay. So you've just completed your first major build. I'm proud of you. I hope you're proud of me. I got a lot more of these things coming, so I'm pretty sure, or I pretty hope, I'm sorry, this video is getting longer than I thought. I hope you enjoyed this video. So there you have it. You have just become a success in coding and putting together wires and boards and making something that lights up that you can go ahead and show off to your friends. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like, give it a subscribe. If you want more of these awesome builds, go ahead and check out my Patreon. I am doing a lot more of these creative little projects that you guys can do on your own time, whenever you feel like it, fully with instructions. You know, I'm working my butt off for you guys, so I hope you guys do enjoy it, and I do hope you go over to my Patreon and you subscribe. Speaking of Patreon, here's a shout out to all my Patreon members currently so far. Welcome all new members to my Patreon. Thank you so much. And until next time, folks, enjoy the rest of your week, and I will be coming at you with more awesome projects just like that, as well as a review video of 2 new printers that I got. So make sure you subscribe on that. Oh, and also you can find me now on Rumble. So if YouTube ads are getting too much for you, go ahead, look me up on Rumble. This will probably be the first video that I upload over there. So hey, there you go. I hope you guys do enjoy this video, and I will see you guys next time on another fun-filled action-packed adventure with Will at Heroic Studios, where I do cool stuff like this. I just love how this lights up. I might just redo the blade and get that full thing going, where I can get the LEDs in the entire thing. So I'm just rambling at this point. Yeah. All right, guys, enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.